Hey guys, welcome to Lesson 2, Multiplying Decimals. We've already looked at how to multiply using long multiplication without decimals, so if that's a skill that you're still working on, just pause this video and take some extra practice. Come in to see me at lunch or watch some more videos before moving on to here, because we're going to be adding an extra step in this one. We're also going to be looking at our estimation techniques again, front end and rounding. The techniques are the exact same as when we did them in addition and subtraction, but this time we're going to be multiplying them instead of adding them once we've applied our rules. When we're multiplying decimals, we don't line up the decimal, whereas in addition and subtraction we did line up the decimal. So that's one very big difference between our multiplying rules and our add-subtract rules when working with decimals. We're going to deal with our decimals at the end of our question and multiply regularly. And to show this, we're going to do an example. 32.1 times 4.2. First, we're going to write them stacked vertically, shoved to the right, trying not to intentionally line up the decimals. If they happen to line up, that's fine. So we start 32.1, and then our second one is 4.2. We want that to be situated farthest to the right as it can. So the 2 should line up with the 1, and then the 4 comes next. In this case, our decimals do line up, but that's just by chance. Now we're going to multiply. Second step is to hop out the decimals. This means that we look at the decimal and see how many it has to go out so that it's no longer in the number. And these both have to hop over one number in order to get out. That's a total of 2 hops. And we'll deal with those at the end of our question. Now we're ready to multiply. We start with our 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Then 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. Now that we're done with our 2's, we can actually cross out that 2 and move on to our second line. When we move over to the 4, we have to put a placeholder in the first spot here. Because we've moved over to the tens, or the ones in this case, because we're working with decimals, we need to put this placeholder there. It can be a 0, it can be an X, it doesn't matter. So when we solve our first multiply, the 4 times 1, it actually ends up in this second place here, underneath the 4. Then 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 3 is 12. We're going to add these on the bottom together now, as we're just solving the multiplication regularly. 2 plus 0 is 2, 4 plus 4 is 8, 6 plus 8 is 14, 2 plus 1 is 3, and then the 1 is by itself over on the end. Our fourth and final step is to hop the decimal back in. So looking back at the top, we had 2 hops. So we're going to go back in 2 hops. Starting on the very outside here, we hop over not 1, but 2 numbers, so that our final decimal resting place is between the 4 and the 8. So our final answer here is 134.82. Right, like that. We have a second question here that you guys can try, and now you try 43.2 times 3.3. You're going to use the same 4 steps that we just used. Just remember that in your final answer, you need to include your decimal back in there. Otherwise, you'll get some marks taken off. So pause the video now and try that out. In the above examples, those decimals did line up, but that's not always going to be the case, so it's important to follow those 4 steps every time. An example of this is 15.6 times 0.23. So we're going to start with our first step, write them stacked vertically, shoved to the right, not lining up the decimals. Our first number is 15.6. Our second number is 0.23. We want the 3 to be as far to the right as possible, so that means it goes underneath the 6. Next is our 2, then our decimal, and our 0. So when we multiply this, our decimals aren't lining up, but that's okay. So we're going to take out our decimals. Step number 2, hop them out. The first number, it has to hop over 1. In the second number, it has to hop over 2. So that's a total of 3 hops. Now we're done with step number 2. Step number 3, solve regularly. Starting as far to the right with our 3. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 5 is 15, plus the little 1 at the top, don't forget that guy, is 16. 3 times 1 is 3, plus the 1 at the top is 4. Now that I'm done with that line, I'm just going to go back to the top and cross out these ones so that I don't use them in the next line. I'm done multiplying my 3. I'm moving over to the 2, so I have to put my placeholder down at the bottom, and then I multiply my 2's. 2 times 6 is 12, so the 2 comes down here, and the 1 for the 12 goes into the next multiplication spot, which is above the 5. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So the other 1 goes up above the other 1. Now we have 2 times 1, which is 2, plus 1, which is 3. And we will add these up. 8 plus 0 is 8, 6 plus 2 is 8, 4 plus 1 is 5, and then the 3 is by itself, so it stays here. We had to go out 3 hops at the beginning, so now we have to go in 3 hops in our final answer, which is step number 4. Starting on the outside, we're going to go in 1, 2, 3 hops. So our decimal ends up there after the 3. Right, like that. So our final answer is 3.588. And you can check this in your calculator to make sure. But whenever we're multiplying a big number by a decimal that's 0 decimal something, we're actually going to get a pretty small number every time. So after this one, there is a Now You Try. Similar type of question. So give that a try on your own. And then the last Now You Try doesn't have any of the steps written there, but you know to still use those steps. Make sure to pause the video now to try those out. Now we're just going to quickly review multiplying decimals by estimation by writing down what front end and rounding are, and then you're going to solve the following on your own and show us in class next class. So first, what is front end estimation? A reminder that in front end estimation, we take the first number and we turn the rest to 0. I'm running out of room, sorry. Rounding is when we look at a specific place value, look to the number to the right, and decide if that place value digit is going to go up by 1 or stay the same. And every number after is going to turn into a 0. I paused the video to write this one in. I'm sorry I didn't give you a lot of room. Just pause and write it down as best you can. Once you're done writing that down, there are 4 questions below. The first 2 are to estimate using front end estimation, and the second 2 are to estimate using rounding. And remember, one says to the nearest ones, the other says to the nearest tenth, so make sure that you're looking and paying attention to those. Just a reminder, you have an entry quiz at the start of our next math class together, just like usual, that will include questions that are similar to the Now You Try and the estimation questions at the end of the lesson. So make sure that you're trying those and asking questions before the entry quiz next class. If this lesson was not enough, or you need a little bit of extra practice or want some extra questions, check out the links to the other videos in the video description or on our Google Classroom, wherever I've posted them. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.